You come home, the trash is everywhere, and your dog is already melting into the floor, ears flat, eyes wide, tail tucked. That face, that guilty face, you've seen it 100 times. But here's the strange part. What if that look isn't guilt at all? What if it's something much older and much sadder than we think? Not whether your dog did something wrong, not what if they like you, not what they think wrong, but whether your dog is actually feeling guilt the way you do, or whether it's just terrified of you in that exact moment. Because the truth is, scientists have been quietly testing this for years, and what they keep finding doesn't match the story we tell ourselves. The real question hiding inside this whole mystery is simple. Do dogs have a sense of right and wrong, or do they just have a sense of us? To answer that, we have to go back to a study that quietly rewired how researchers see the dog mind. In 2009, a scientist named Alexandra Horowitz at Barnard College decided to test something almost no one had tested before. She wanted to know if the famous guilty look was really triggered by guilt, or if it was triggered by something else entirely. So she designed a careful little experiment with dogs and their owners. Each owner was told to leave a treat in front of their dog and forbid the dog from eating it. Then the owner left the room. While the owner was gone, the researcher either let the dog eat the treat or took the treat away herself. So sometimes the dog was guilty, and sometimes the dog was completely innocent. Then the owner came back and was told one of two things. Sometimes they were told the dog had obeyed. Sometimes they were told the dog had disobeyed, whether it was true or not. And here is where it gets fascinating. The dogs that looked the most guilty were not the ones that had actually eaten the treat. They were the ones whose owner scolded them, regardless of what they had really done. The innocent dogs that got scolded showed even more of the guilty look than the truly disobedient ones. In other words, the famous guilty face wasn't a confession. It was a reaction to the human, to the tone, the posture, the energy walking through the door. Now sit with that for a second. Your dog's most human-looking expression might not be human at all. It might be a survival signal, refined over thousands of years of living beside us. To understand why, we need to look at where that face actually comes from. Dogs are not just tame wolves with cuter eyes. They are a species that evolved specifically to read us. Their entire social world depends on decoding human behavior. A wolf reads its pack. A dog reads its person. Studies have shown that dogs can follow a human's pointing finger better than chimpanzees can. They can read subtle shifts in our facial expression. They can hear the difference between a happy voice and an angry one, even in a language they've never heard. So when you walk into a room radiating frustration, your dog notices instantly. The shoulders, the breath, the eyebrows, the hands. A dog can read all of that in less than a second. And what does a smart social animal do when a much bigger creature seems upset? It tries to look as small and non-threatening as possible. Flattened ears, lowered head, averted gaze, a slow, low tail wag, maybe a lick of the lips. These are not signs of moral guilt. These are what scientists call appeasement behaviors. They are the dog's way of saying, I am not a threat, please don't escalate. Wolves do versions of this with each other. Puppies do it with their mothers. And dogs do it with us, because to them we are the most important social figure in their universe. So when you see that guilty look, you might really be seeing a small, brilliant act of social diplomacy. Not a confession, a negotiation. But this is where the story gets more interesting, not less. Because saying it isn't guilt doesn't mean dogs feel nothing. Far from it. Dogs absolutely feel emotions. Brain scans have shown that dogs experience joy, fear, attachment, and even something that looks like jealousy. They form deep bonds. They grieve when their humans disappear. They get genuinely excited at the sound of a familiar car. The question isn't whether dogs feel. The question is whether they feel guilt the way we mean it. And guilt, in the human sense, is a strangely complicated thing. Real guilt requires you to do something, to know it was wrong, to remember doing it, to understand how it affected someone else, and then to feel bad about that effect. That's a lot of mental machinery. It requires a sense of self, a sense of others, and a sense of time. Human children don't really show full guilt until around the age of 2 or 3. So, can a dog do all of that? The honest answer is, we don't fully know. For most evidence suggests dogs live much more in the present than in the past. They probably don't sit there at noon replaying the morning's trash incident with regret. They're far more likely to react to what's happening right now in the room with you, which means the guilty look is usually not memory of wrongdoing. It's a response to the storm cloud walking through the door. Quick pause for a second. I'm curious about your dog. Have you ever talked to your dog doing the guilty face when you knew with absolute certainty that they hadn't done anything wrong? Or the opposite, totally innocent face after total chaos? Tell me your story in the comments. I read them, and these little real-life moments are some of my favorite proof of how mysterious our dogs really are. Now back to the mystery, because there is still something unresolved here. Even if it isn't full human guilt, dogs do seem to know that certain actions lead to certain reactions. If your dog tears up a pillow, runs in circles, then suddenly freezes when it hears your key in the door, what is that? That isn't random. That dog has learned a pattern. Nas plus human equals trouble. Some researchers think this is a kind of associative learning, not moral reasoning. The dog isn't thinking, I did a bad thing. The dog is thinking, this situation usually ends badly for me. Others go a little further. They suggest some dogs may have a primitive sense of rules, not morality but expectation. A sense of this is allowed and this is not allowed in their home. A sense of social fairness has even been observed in dogs in lab settings. When one dog gets a treat for a trick and another dog doesn't, the unrewarded dog often refuses to keep performing. Something in them notices the imbalance. That's not nothing. That's the faint outline of a moral world sketched in a different language than ours. So maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Dogs probably don't feel guilt the way you do after snapping at someone you love. But they're not just cold pattern machines either. They live in a rich emotional world built around reading you, pleasing you, and avoiding conflict with you. And that brings us to the uncomfortable part. Because if the guilty look is mostly fear, then a lot of what we've laughed at for years deserves a second thought. Those viral videos of dogs cowering while an owner shouts at the camera. The shame the dog photos with handwritten signs. We watched those as comedy. The dog was probably experiencing something closer to confusion and dread. Not understanding the words. Not understanding the sign. Just feeling a wave of anger from the most important being in its life. That doesn't make you a bad owner for laughing once. But it does change how we should respond when our dog gives us that face. Because the dog isn't admitting wrongdoing. The dog is asking for peace. And how you respond in that moment teaches your dog who you are. Modern animal behaviorists tend to agree on something simple. Punishing a dog after the fact almost never works. The dog doesn't connect your anger to an action it took 20 minutes ago. It only connects your anger to right now, to this room, to you, to itself. So scolding the guilty face often just teaches the dog that you are sometimes scary for no clear reason, which can actually make the appeasement behavior worse over time. More flinching, more hiding, more of that face. Not what they feel, not what they think of you, but because the dog feels less safe. And there is something quietly heartbreaking in that realization. The expression that made us feel most understood by our dogs, the one that made us feel like they shared our moral world, may actually be the expression of an animal trying very hard not to be hurt by us, trying to read a giant, unpredictable creature it loves, trying to keep the peace in a home it doesn't fully understand. That is not less beautiful than guilt. In some ways, it's more. because it means your dog isn't mirroring your morality. Your dog is choosing you over and over, even when it doesn't know what it did wrong. And maybe that's the bigger lesson hiding inside this whole question. We keep asking if animals are like us, if they feel what we feel, if they think the way we think. But the deeper truth might be that they feel things we don't have words for. A dog's inner life is not a smaller version of yours. It's a different shape entirely, tuned to scent, to motion, to social signals you barely notice. Living in a present moment far richer than ours. Loving in a way that doesn't require language or logic or guilt. So the next time your dog gives you that look, try something different. Don't read it as confession. Read it as conversation. A small, ancient, wordless way of saying, please still love me. And maybe answer with the only thing that ever really works. Soften your voice. Lower your shoulders. Kneel down, and let your dog see that the storm has passed. Because in the end, dogs may not know right from wrong the way we do, but they know us. And that somehow feels like the deeper magic. If this made you see your dog a little differently, do me a quick favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps these stories reach more animal lovers. If you want more videos like this, where we crack open the inner lives of the animals we think we already know, subscribe and stay with me. And tell me in the comments, do you still believe your dog feels real guilt? Or has your mind shifted while watching this? I'm reading every answer. Next time, we're going somewhere stranger. We're stepping inside the mind of a cat and asking the question almost no one dares to ask out loud. Does your cat actually love you or just tolerate you? I'll see you there.